And I'm scrolling through the list of people in the meeting, and I see a lot of names I don't know. So that's wonderful. So, glad you're all here. And I see a few familiar faces. So I'm Todd Lando. I'm with Central Marin Fire Department and the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I'm a battalion chief and manage the wildfire mitigation programs for most of the Ross Valley. Actively engaged in this subject every day of my life. I've been a firefighter, wildland firefighter, and municipal firefighter for 32 years. I have some strong feelings and a lot of experience in this, and hope that I share a few things with you tonight that might surprise you. Hope you come away learning a few things. I'm going to race through this to some extent because this is a topic we could spend all day talking about: evacuations, misconceptions in the actual process of evacuation, what it's like for people, what you need to pack. I'm going to try to condense it down into 15 or 20 minutes. And we'll undoubtedly have some questions, and it's going to open some doors to other things that you're going to need to explore on your own. I'm always available by cell phone. We can share that number later. If you guys have questions, want personalized recommendations, visits from the fire department, we can make that all happen. So this is a critical topic. This slide here is based on research we put together following the Camp Fire in Paradise in 2018. This is the deadliest wildfire in California history, one of the deadliest in U.S. history. It's the deadliest since 1910, at least. And it was in our backyards. All of us smelled the smoke from this fire. Many of us had pieces of ash or even bigger pieces of burning buildings float down into our own yards here in Marin County from a fire that was 200 miles away from us. A catastrophic incident on a scale that's hard to imagine. 16,000 houses burned. 88 people died. And this, more than any other fire I'm aware of, has really pushed our fears and our anxieties, our efforts to become better prepared, our efforts to mitigate wildfires. It's really changed sort of the course of, I think, California history. What's important for you to understand, of the people who died during this fire, 88 people who passed away, virtually everyone who died inside their home. 58 of those people died inside their home. 12 people died immediately outside their home in their front yards. 3 people died on foot within 100 yards of their home. Only 10 people died after they got into a vehicle to try to evacuate. Of those 10 people who died while attempting to evacuate, only one of them ever made it to pavement. That person sadly drove off of the pavement, we think in a moment where they got lost in the smoke, drove into burning vegetation on the side of the road. The takeaway for this, and we're going to cover this in several more slides, and I'm going to say this over and over. The takeaway here is that of the 88 people who died, only one person died if they made it to pavement. Your goal when evacuating a wildfire is to get into your car and get onto pavement and get to the valley floor. In Marin, and in your communities, that's probably Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Magnolia, Bon Air. Your goal is to get as low into the valley as possible in your car on pavement. And if you do that, we have every reason to believe that you will not be harmed during even the most catastrophic wildfire that we can imagine in Marin County, and we can imagine some bad ones here. I'm going to show a quick video. I hope this plays for you. This is the Oakland Hills Fire, 1991, 10 miles from where you're sitting. This is the Kincaid fire in Sonoma County 2 years ago.
Fires raging in California. Two of them exploded in size with frightening speed.
The homes are becoming a home. It's blackout condition. Totally surrounded by fire. I have people in the car. The road is blocked. We need assistance immediately. Any units at the River Hospital. We've got 4 people trapped in the basement. Sounds like it's surrounded by fire. They're safe underneath, but they can't get out. Tell them to shelter in place.
Even if people can evacuate their homes, this is what they have to contend with. Thick smoke.
Someone's abandoned a vehicle in the roadway north of you. I'm going to try and get there on foot. We've got the fire coming southbound Skyway, where Skyway and Mofty. We've got the road completely blocked. We need somebody to be able to open it up and get these people out of here. It's not looking good for get people out. We have one patient, approximately burns over 45%.
Over the last 24 hours, there have been harrowing accounts of people literally abandoning their vehicles and getting out to run for their lives.
The fire is starting to crowd the trees. Do we have any air assets to drop water? But air resources to drop water there. Stand by.
All right, I've showed that video to set the tone because there are some misconceptions relayed through some of that footage that I'll talk about in a minute. You know, it's just a reminder of what we've seen for the last 8 years in California. Really, that started in 1991, but most of that footage was from 2015 till now. I'm going to talk about the importance of being aware of what's happening in your surroundings. This means paying attention, especially during fire season, to the weather, to what's happening outside. Go outside, look, smell. Is there smoke in the air? Pay attention to the news. Listen for news sources, especially on those days when we know that the weather forecast is calling for particularly bad fire weather, typically called a red flag warning by the National Weather Service. In Marin County, we know that the weather conditions that drive catastrophic wildfires are always going to have wind blowing from the same direction, from the northeast. When this happens, the Weather Service issues that red flag warning. It's not something that's selected by firefighters. It's not your fire chief calling for a red flag warning. It's actually the meteorologists with the National Weather Service predicting weather conditions that could drive catastrophic fires. Those conditions are always strong northeast winds, somewhere between north and east winds, coming from the Sierra Nevada or Northern California, winds that are blowing over land, not from the west over the ocean. When the winds come from the west, they're cooler, they carry moisture, they're much less dangerous from a fire perspective. So understanding that weather pattern is important to you and paying attention for those words, red flag warning, can make a huge difference in your preparedness. We've had some, I guess, in some ways, extra warning for the last several years as PG&E has issued public safety power shutdowns during red flag warnings, but they're not going to do that forever. PG&E is upgrading their lines, they're making their equipment safer, and as the equipment becomes safer, the power shutdowns are going to become less and less frequent. So you're not going to have this instant reminder that the fire weather's bad by seeing your lights go out. That's a good thing, but we also felt that people really connected with and understood the kind of weather that we're talking about. We want you to pay attention when there's fires burning nearby. I think most of you have seen several wildfires in Marin in the last couple of years. We hear from people all the time that there are more fires than ever in Marin. That's not true. Actually, there are fewer wildfires happening in Marin than ever right now. That's probably a good thing, but it's interesting to me that people feel that there are more fires happening. It's really because you're paying more attention. And when there is a small fire in Marin. It makes the papers, and people are on heightened alert, and they see it, they hear it, they remember it. 25 years ago, there were grass fires and small wildfires just about every day in Marin during the summertime, and you probably weren't paying attention and didn't realize it. So when a fire is burning nearby, it's critical that you've got your news turned on. News radio, AM, FM radios are still a great source of information. You've got one in your car, if nowhere else. Just paying attention to the newspaper when there are large fires like the Woodward fire that burned for 2 weeks in West Marin 2 years ago. And I can't overstate this. You've got to pay attention to what's happening outside, looking for smoke, listening for sirens, the aircraft that we use to fight fires, smelling for smoke. All those things can alert you and help you know when it's time to start to prepare your house and your family, your pets. We want you to be signed up for alerts and warnings. Thank you, Rachel. That poll was great. I love seeing that. I'm not going to cover this in any great depth because your NRGs are talking to you about this every day, including tonight. But it's critical that you're signed up for the alert and warning systems. Alert Marin is our primary notification system. Nixle is a great source. And there are other sources like our weather radios can give you good information about wildfires when they're burning nearby and evacuations. So Alert Marin, looked like just about all of you are registered. So fantastic. Kudos to you guys. I want you to understand, though, the difference between Alert Marin and Nixle and some of the other sources of information. Alert Marin, when you're registered for it, you had to register an address, a physical street address. We use that because we can notify you when a wildfire is potentially going to impact that address. We can send you specific information to that address. Because it's so specific and it's such a robust alerting system, we only use Alert Marin when there's some type of action that's necessary for you to take at that address. So we don't use Alert Marin to give you general information. We don't use Alert Marin for anything that's non-emergency. I've had people tell me before, well, I received a notification via Alert Marin that there was an elderly Alzheimer's patient lost in my neighborhood. That's not a wildfire. Well, I want you to understand that it's used by emergency services only, and that includes law enforcement. And an elderly Alzheimer's patient lost in your neighborhood is an emergency, and we use it sometimes for other types of emergencies besides just wildfires. Again, only used when action is required at your address or one of the addresses that you've registered through that system. And you can register multiple addresses, including your child's school, your parents' home, so that you can keep tabs on multiple locations, all in Marin County. Nixle is used when we want to send information out. Sometimes we'll repeat evacuation messages, but this is usually the second notice we sent out. So there may be a longer delay for us to get messages out via Nixle in an emergency. We use it to send out lower level type information, maybe road closures, the locations of shelters, other types of information rather than just evacuation notices. And we do that because we can only notify entire zip codes via Nixle, not specific addresses. We also use social media, Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor, for lower level information with a much longer delay. So it's not going to be up to the minute on social media like Alert Marin might be. We use this terminology is important, but I'm not going to dwell on this because when we send a message out via Alert Marin, we'll tell you what an evacuation order means versus an evacuation warning. So when we send out an evacuation order, it means that you need to evacuate immediately with no delay. It's time to go. It's too late to pack anything. Beyond your go bag, beyond dressing yourself appropriately for an evacuation, you're to leave your home with nothing but your family, your pets, and your go bag. An evacuation warning means that we think you have some time to prepare, and when we announce this, we'll always give you a time frame. It's usually going to be more than 2 hours before we think it's going to be time to evacuate. In some cases, like West Marin 2 years ago, all of the West Marin communities were under an evacuation warning for almost 2 weeks during the Woodward fire. And that just meant that everybody there needed to be prepared to evacuate should the fire behavior change, should the winds shift, should the weather pattern get worse. There was a chance that we might need to order people to evacuate essentially at any moment. And shelter in place is an option for us. We sometimes tell people to shelter in place when there's a fire burning nearby and we don't want you to evacuate. And this is going to be common. Most wildfires in Marin are fires that we can extinguish. If your fire department can put out 99.9% of the wildfires within an hour of them starting. In those cases, we want people to stay indoors, stay at home, stay off of the streets. Don't get in your cars, don't get in the way of the fire apparatus that are responding to go put that fire out. So don't be surprised if we tell you to shelter in place, stay inside. We can put this fire out and we don't want you to evacuate. It was a great question about Zone Haven today. I'm going to briefly touch on Zone Haven. This is a system that, this is the system that we use to organize evacuations in the emergency services. There is a public-facing website that you can look at to see the areas that have been evacuated during an emergency. So you'll be able to visually see individual neighborhoods and whether they're under an evacuation order or an evacuation warning or a shelter-in-place direction. It's important that you understand how to find Zone Haven. You can find it at emergency.marincounty.org or zonehaven.org. This is used by just about every county in Northern California now. It's a great system for us as firefighters to organize large-scale evacuations. It's great for us to communicate to you the importance of, or the locations of evacuations. And you're going to see us push out lots of information about how to know your zone. The county is divided up into about 175 individual zones based on geography and population and potential wildfires primarily. It's important for you to know your zone, but honestly, it's not critical because if you can get to the website, zonehaven.org, you can search for your home address and find it instantly and see the zone you're in. So while you're going to hear us talk about knowing your zone, in general, that's nice to know, but don't worry if you've forgotten your zone. You'll be able to find it during an emergency. You'll get a notification from Alert Marin when it's time for your zone to evacuate. And if you're able to look online and read a map, you'll be able to find your home and figure out if you're affected by that evacuation. I just covered all these details. Again, it's primarily used by us to organize evacuations and communicate to you where those evacuations are occurring. And in the past, our old system, this is how we shared evacuations. We would draw a boundary by hand on a map. We would send this information to the Office of Emergency Services at the Civic Center. They would gather that information, use it to select addresses and send out an alert via Alert Marin. This is an actual evacuation warning that was received 2 years ago before Zone Haven was launched in Marin. This was you can see that boundary on the map was actually hand drawn by the fire chief managing the Woodward fire at Point Reyes. This is what a fire looks like under Zone Haven while we're using it to evacuate. There's much greater detail. You can actually click on these zones, see the description of the boundary, see a reason for the evacuation. A lot more information is available to you. So this is just an illustration of what it might look like during an actual fire. This was a fire in looks like somewhere down in Santa Clara County. Oh no, this is up Shasta County. I hope each of you has got somewhere in your house one of these wildfire evacuation checklists. They're available. Rachel should have some. If not, we can get more to you. You can come pick them up at your local fire station. We've published these checklists for about the last 6 years. They're divided into 3 columns: things that you always do during a wildfire evacuation, things that you might do if time allows, and things that you should do and be aware of while you're actually evacuating in your car, driving from your home to safety. Lots of information on these checklists. I'd love for you to have one and study it. You know, that there's great information here, and it's not the kind of thing I want you to be reading in detail during the fire. I'd rather you study it before the fire occurs. This is the topic we're going to cover kind of in most detail here. I already touched on it in my opening spiel. Your evacuation route, the route that you take to evacuate your neighborhood, is so important, and it's so simple. There are no secret evacuation routes out of any neighborhood I'm aware of in Marin County. I get calls just about every day from people who ask me, should I take the fire road behind my house? I've been in heated arguments with neighbors who say, you know what, we're not listening to what the fire department says. During a fire, we're taking the fire road that's at the end of our street because we don't want to be stuck in traffic. The fear of being stuck in traffic is driving really poor decision making during evacuations. I go back to the first slide I showed you. Only one person who made it to pavement died during the campfire, and that person drove off of the road. They didn't stay on the pavement. Had they stayed on the pavement, they would have survived. And then I showed you a video that showed the news media talking about people abandoning their cars and running for their lives. You saw video footage of cars burned up on the side of the road. That's really created a misconception about what it's like during a wildfire and how dangerous traffic might be. Traffic, frankly, is not dangerous during a wildfire evacuation, and you should expect traffic. We get traffic in the morning when it's time for school. We're going to get terrible traffic during wildfires, but being in traffic in your car on pavement with the windows rolled up is not a bad place to be. It's actually one of the safest places you can be during a wildfire. So your route is the fastest route you have to the valley floor. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the route that you take to get to the grocery store, to do your shopping, to get out of your hillside neighborhood. It's the fastest way down the hill. It's the route that you know the best. It's the one that you've got memorized and that you can drive while blindfolded or in the dark or in the smoke. That's your evacuation route every time. Like I said, I get this question I laugh at, and I apologize if any of you have asked me this, but I get these calls from people that say, I live in a neighborhood where there's only one way in and one way out. Which way am I supposed to go during a wildfire? And that's a head scratcher for me. If you've got one way out, that's the way you're going. It's a really simple question. That's the way you're going. And it's not that bad a thing to get in your car and be on pavement and evacuate the same way you do, you go to the grocery store. We definitely want you to avoid fire roads at all costs. Fire roads are our unpaved roads. It's where most of you walk your dogs or go on hikes. They're unpaved roads. They're surrounded by green vegetation or brown vegetation in the summer, and they are absolutely the most dangerous place for you to be during a wildfire. They're fire roads for a reason. They're roads that we use in fire engines to access wildfires, to fight wildfires. They're roads that we might use in our fire engines to protect your homes or to access your neighborhood while there's traffic on the pavement. It's extremely dangerous to be out there in unburned vegetation during a wildfire. Your fire department and your firefighters are paid to take great risks. They have fantastic equipment and training. They have radios and can communicate with the aircraft that are flying overhead. We've got great information and training to take extra risks that you should never take. So there are very few times I say never, but it's just about never that you would take a fire road. The exception to that is if the fire department tells you to take the fire road. And there are some conditions where we might tell you to do that. Usually if the vegetation has already burned and there's no more fuel to burn in your path, but it's only the fire department that's going to know that's the case. So we don't want you to make that decision on your own. We've published these maps for the entire county. They're called Fire Clear Evacuation Maps. People seem to get a really good feeling when they've got one of these maps in their hands. I see people look like they're much more at ease when they're holding one of these maps, but I'm here to tell you, you don't need this map. I'm behind these maps. I helped create these maps. We worked with a visual scientist who develops things that are easy to read under stress, but these maps don't tell you anything you don't already know. If you can get to Highway 101 from your house in Marin, if you can get to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, you already know everything that's on this map. There are no secrets on these maps. Still doesn't hurt to take a look at one, and if it makes you feel better, that's a win for us. So, but again, you can study these maps all you want, and you're probably not going to learn anything from them. The maps are available at FireSafe Marin. We can help you find them at your local fire station, and on our evacuation checklist, there are links so that you can find them online. They're all published as PDFs and available for download. Going to talk a little bit about survival for evacuations and then sort of wrap this up because it ties into your evacuation drills and questions about drilling. So surviving an evacuation, like I said, is not that difficult. Wildfires are dangerous events, but if you get in your car and you've dressed appropriately and you evacuate early, you are in all likelihood going to escape just fine, unharmed. Your go kit is critical. Each of you I should have a go kit. It should be near your front door or in the trunk of your car, as long as you're always with your car. Your go kit, you should have one for each family member. You should have one really for your pets individually. We really want to see you store these items in a backpack so that you can put it on your back and keep your hands free and carry it if you need to get out and walk away from a wildfire. And they just need to be accessible, and you should know what's in them and check them frequently. I find people sometimes raid the batteries and flashlights in these when they need them and then forget to restock their kits. So really important that you build a kit. All of the items that should be in your go kit are printed on the back of the evacuation checklist, and they're available at FireSafe Marin. We're going to raffle a fantastic go kit, our model go kit, off at the Bon Air celebration on the 7th. If you're there, please go down and pick up a raffle ticket. We're going to donate the funds that we raise in the raffle to the NRG program. It's about a $300 kit that's available. If you go buy a raffle ticket, you'll also get a QR code so that you can potentially purchase your own kit if you need to, and you're not the lucky winner of the kit. But the simple stuff, all on the checklist or at FireSafe Marin, you can build your own. I mentioned this twice already, and I'm going to say it again. The way you dress is so important during evacuations from a wildfire. You need to protect your skin. You should have no exposed skin. Just cotton clothing, cotton or wool clothing, will protect you against the heat and the radiant heat from fires. You don't need the special clothing that firefighters wear. Cotton or wool are just as good as what we wear, believe it or not. Long sleeve shirts, even if it's 100 degrees out, you should be dressing in long sleeve shirts, long heavy cotton pants. You should wear the best shoes you've got, right? Not your fancy dancing shoes, but the sturdiest boots or hard shoes that you've got. You may need to climb, you may need to walk, and they should be comfortable, because you may wind up wearing these for weeks if God forbid something happens to your neighborhood and you're not able to return to your home. We want you to wear a floppy cotton hat on your head for a reason. It will help keep embers out of your hair. If embers are falling, we want you to have a cotton bandana that can wrap all the way around your face. 2 years ago, I told people that they should have an N95 mask, and people would always ask, what's an N95 mask? Nobody asks me that anymore. We've all got them, you've got them stuffed in every corner of your house now. So you should wear an N95 mask under that cotton bandana. A wool scarf or a cotton scarf wrapped around your face will work just as well. You're trying to protect your face from any heat that it might be exposed to. You're trying to keep embers off of your face and give you a little extra filtration from smoke. Those gloves are so important. Heavy leather gardening gloves, all right? They should be all leather. These will help protect your hands. If you were to come across a tree that had fallen, a log that had rolled into the road during a wildfire, it probably rolled there because it was burning. It's going to be hot, and you can potentially move it out of the roadway as long as you've got heavy leather gloves. You should wear them at all times during that evacuation, so you don't have to find them if you stop your car. And the goggles are so important also. During the wildfires, it's going to be windy. There will be embers and ash in the air. If you get a speck of ash into your eye at the wrong moment, it could cost you your life, because you won't be able to see and won't be able to drive. You won't be able to evacuate yourself. So all of these items are important. You should pack these things or have them right next to your go bag, so that you always have them with you. I don't want you to have to go find your winter clothes at the moment you get an evacuation order via Alert Marin. Your pets, This is one that requires a lot of preparation in advance. Getting a carrier for your cat can be life-saving. We know of lots of examples of people who died in their homes trying to find their cats during the North Bay fires, during the Camp Fire. This was a much more common cause of injuries and death than traffic. Get your cat situated in a carrier before it's time to evacuate. Put them in there. I like this one because you can put a bowl of water and food in there with the cat, and the cat may be unhappy, but if there's any chance you're going to need to evacuate and you have a little bit of time to prepare, this can be a step that can save your life and will certainly save your pet. You will not be able to find them at the moment you need to evacuate when the stress level's high and sirens are blaring outside. Do this in advance. So we've talked a little bit about evacuation orders. Excuse me, I'm going to push through some of these slides. This is one some of you may remember from the San Francisco Chronicle during the Oakland Hills fire. This is what this fellow doing. Is this safe? This is a critically dangerous mistake. He's balancing on the peak of a roof that's so steep that if he falls, there's no way he's going to stop. He's wetting the roof down just to make it extra slippery. And what he's doing is not going to have any impact on the fire. He's got a composition shingle roof. That roof can't burn to begin with. It felt like a good thing to do for him. He's not dressed appropriately. And if he falls off that roof and breaks his leg, it's going to take 2 fire engines, an ambulance, lots of firefighters, and probably a helicopter away from fighting this fire. We can't afford to do that. We can't be rescuing people who were doing stupid things during fires. So don't do this. I think I'm yet to respond to a wildfire in Marin where I didn't see this happening. It's ineffective. It's not going to save your home. It's putting you and firefighters at risk. Don't do this. You guys already saw this video in the beginning, but I'm going to show it to you again, the longer version. Kids have their bags packed. Mom's putting probably photo albums in the back of the car. They had some time with a warning to prepare themselves. The fire's approaching. The evacuation orders come. The kid drops his dinosaur. But this family survived. They were prepared. They evacuated when they received the evacuation order. Their neighbors came to tell them to evacuate. You saw one of the neighbors run over to make sure that the family next door had received the word, and they evacuated. They got out safely. Everybody got out safely during the Kincaid fire. This fire evacuated virtually all of Sonoma County all the way to the Marin County border. I've said this again, and you've got to stay in your car. You're safer in your car. We want you to turn your headlights on, roll your windows up, turn on the inside air. Carpooling is something we can't stress enough. The best way for us to reduce traffic during wildfire evacuations is to get as many bodies into seats in cars as possible. You should not have an empty seat. Pick up your neighbor. If you've got an elderly neighbor who might need help, pick them up, get them into your car. That's another car that's off of the road and potentially a life saved once all your seats are full. So say it again, traffic is not the problem. This photograph scared a lot of people. These cars were burned after they were abandoned. People left these cars in the road and ran on foot where they were much more exposed. They were more likely to be injured outside of these cars. The cars burned after we used a bulldozer to push them off the side of the road so that we could get fire engines down that road. The cars did not burn in the middle of the road. Again, this has created so many misconceptions and so much confusion that I'm concerned that this photograph and the other ones like it from the campfire are going to cost lives during the next wildfire because people misunderstood what happened here. Nobody was injured in these cars. Nobody died in these cars, and they burned hours after the cars were abandoned by people. The cars survived just fine in the road. In fact, if you look on the other side of the road, there's nothing burned. The trees are green. Everything's just fine on the other side of the road. Those people could have stayed in their cars, waited the traffic out. It might have been scary, but they would have survived, and their cars would have survived the fire, frankly, had they stayed on the pavement. I'm going to push through this. Again, we never go out fire roads unless you're directed to by the fire department. Some of you may live in neighborhoods that are served by stairways and paths, and you may have it in your mind that that's a safe way to evacuate. We're not willing to say that it's never a way to evacuate, but I believe that they're extremely dangerous. You're exposed. There's vegetation on both sides of these pathways. There are things like fences. There may be burning houses. You're going to be exposed to much more heat and much more danger if you choose to take one of these pathways than if you had stayed in your car. You'd only use these pathways to go downhill if there was no other option. We want you to be aware of temporary refuge areas. These are places like ball fields, parking lots at grocery stores, at the mall, places usually on the valley floor where you're far from any potentially burning vegetation. They're great places where people can gather during an evacuation if traffic is stopped, and you can get yourself to one of these parking areas or a ball field or a golf course without abandoning your car. It can be a safe option for you to wait out the fire. All right, so that's it. I pushed through one a little longer than I said I would, but I really appreciate you listening, and I suspect there are some questions, so I'm happy to take those questions.
Thank you, Todd. And people, you can still, if you want to raise your virtual Zoom hand, I'll also keep an eye on the screen if there's people who raise their hand, or you can use the chat. Todd, there is a question that came through from Madrone Canyon, and picking on Madrone Canyon, but there's a number of areas that have the one way in, one way out, where there's a number of homes. In San Anselmo, we have that, Mill Valley, I mean, across the county, there's these situations. Do we wait to, when should people in those situations wait to evacuate? Do you wait for the order? Do you go with the warning?
If I lived in a neighborhood like Madrone Canyon, and in some ways I do, I live in Woodacre, and Woodacre, the entire town was destroyed by a fire in 1923, including the lot that I live on. I'm not waiting for the evacuation order. I'm going to leave when there's an evacuation warning, or frankly, if the smell of smoke gets strong, if the wind is blowing towards me and there's a significant fire burning anywhere nearby, I'm going to pack my family into my car and leave early. I don't want to wait for the evacuation order. You're better, if you're worried about traffic, your best bet is to get ahead of that traffic. Drive yourself safely and slowly, pack your car and leave early. Head for San Francisco or the East Bay, head to a place that's safe. If you've got relatives or someone to stay with, if it's a smaller fire, head to the downtown, head to the North Gate, head to Bon Air and wait it out. Most small fires are going to be put out quickly. It may be scary. We may evacuate a handful of homes adjacent to smaller fires, and you may not have to leave Marin. Again, most fires are not going to turn into the campfire, and evacuations may only last for a couple of hours if they happen at all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pedron.
How do you safely cross Sir Francis Drake if the traffic lights are out and you're on foot?
Yeah, cars are supposed to yield for pedestrians, but honestly, if the traffic lights are out, I don't have a good answer for you. I would only cross at a crosswalk if you can. During a wildfire, it may be difficult. The good news is that traffic's probably going to be moving very slowly, but think about visibility. There may be smoke. It may be harder for cars to see you. Expect drivers to be panicked in some cases and not thinking as clearly as they might normally. So that's an extra dangerous situation for you. I'd rather you not be on foot during a wildfire.
Thank you. Question about Greenbrae Hills. I'm going to speak from San Rafael's perspective. San Rafael has identified some streets where we have parking boxes to limit the number of cars. Is that something that's in place for Central Marin or for Greenbrae Hills?
Not in place for Greenbrae Hills. There are no parking boxes that I'm aware of anywhere in Greenbrae. Greenbrae is part of Greenbrae is in the city limits of Larkspur. Part of it is unincorporated. Sounds like this person contacted the county and the POA. There are neighborhoods in Larkspur that have rallied as a community, asked for parking boxes, and we've delivered. The Public Works Department has painted parking boxes on Wilson Way, parts of Baltimore. Palm Hill will be getting some parking boxes painted later this year. So it's something that helps. It reduces, off-street parking or on-street parking. It ensures that people are parked far enough off to the edge. I think it's a good option for us in some cases. It may or may not work in Green Bay. There are all kinds of considerations that Public Works needs to consider before they'll paint those boxes. But if you engage with your city council, if you're in the city limits, or if you engage with the Board of Supervisors, if you're in the county, there are potential options to do that. It needs to be a community level decision, and you need to build support among your neighbors.
Right, thank you. Patty, I'm going to say no, but I'm going to let Todd formally answer that question. NRGs, would you like assistance for helping to be crossing guards?
Well, we don't need crossing guards during evacuations. Yes, I don't see the question up in the chat, but regardless, no. Nobody but firefighters are going to be exposed outside. We don't need crossing guards. We don't want people evacuating on foot, so a crossing guard at a crosswalk is not going to be an issue. If you're on foot, what you should be doing is looking for a car that has an empty seat and a friendly driver who will pick you up. We do not want you on foot attempting to cross intersections during that fire.
Thank you, Patty, but no thank you. Red flag warning. How does that relate to evacuation warning?
So they're unrelated. Red flag warning is a weather forecast. Now, it just so happens that evacuations are more likely to happen during a red flag warning, but it's just the same way that people are more likely to go into their tornado shelter during a tornado warning. They're two separate subjects. Red flag warning is issued by meteorologists at the Weather Service. We listen to that. We make decisions on what to do with the red flag warning here in Marin. You'll see that some parks are closed. In some neighborhoods, they limit off-street parking during red flag warnings. That may or may not make sense in your neighborhood. I don't want everybody to necessarily jump on that idea. It's not always something that's necessary. But there are actions we take when a meteorologist from the Weather Service has issued a red flag warning. Those red flag warnings are almost always during periods of very low humidities with winds coming from the east or northeast.
Absolutely. All right, clearing. Is it too soon? I don't think it's ever too soon, Mary. Does clearing hillsides from weeds since there could be more rains?
And now is probably actually a good time to clear. It is. We're hoping we see a little more rain, but I think it's not particularly likely at this point. It's a good time to cut your grasses. There are parts of Marin where the grasses are already dry and ready to burn. Central Marin, Larkspur, Corte Madera is probably a few weeks behind Novato. I'm actually parked in Novato right now looking at dry hillsides where we could see a fire right now. So I would count on seeing that in your neighborhoods really soon. Cut the grasses now. It's actually safer to cut them when they're a little bit green. You're less likely to start a fire yourself.
I'm in San Rafael, on the north side of San Rafael, into open space, and our goats visited. So we had the goats a few weeks ago. So yes, absolutely.
You sometimes you're going to see a little bit of regrowth after you cut it. So there's a chance you'll have to cut it again, but I think it's worth the extra effort.
Okay, other questions? Talk a little bit about the NRGs just for a minute here. So many of the Central Marin NRGs are conducting their own drills. These are, we're calling them at-home evacuation drills. There's a number of people on this line right now who have done that. These are really focusing within their NRG of how to prepare for an evacuation to get to their car. And that's where the evacuation drill ends. It is not to drive someplace, because we've been really advised that driving to a location, that's not really the focus, because that will be managed through the sheriff or the police department in the event of an evacuation. The real critical thing as NRG groups and teams is really about preparing. So again, focusing on the list, if you had those 10 minutes, could you get your cat into a car and your things that you want? I keep bringing back the cat because I know it would take more than 10 minutes for me to get my cat into a car, because as soon as he sees the carrier, he's gone. So I would have no idea what to do. So I think it's really about the more you drill with evacuations, the less likelihood you'll panic, because that's, you saw in that video, what you saw were people running around, one family being fairly calm, going out with their items that they had prepared, and the other neighbors running around sort of in a panic of what to do. Or at least I'll assume they're panicking a bit. So the idea with the NRGs, and we recommend providing a lot of communication about your at-home evacuation drill, just like you would do for our normal drills, but providing a lot of communication, providing tips on what to, maybe what you want to take. Todd, I'm sure you have stories of people who evacuated and what they left home with. That they probably are wondering, why in the world did I leave home? And I'll let you share a couple of those stories. And then really, we do not, again, just a reminder, these are not to drive, and we are encouraging using the opportunity to do this at-home evacuation drill and have maybe a social aspect to it. Some are doing potlucks, some are doing a wine and cheese, something to bring people together, use that as an opportunity to fill out your resident information form, and just to talk. It's really just to talk and share about what worked and what didn't work. So Todd, share some stories. What did people bring?
So I've got two great examples of people overpacking for evacuation. In Fairfax, we had a wildfire in 2018, shortly after the North Bay fires. It wasn't a wildfire, it was a house fire. And the fire engine was blocked en route to that fire. They were at least delayed getting to the fire because they came across piles of people's belongings in the road. They found there were paintings that had been taken off people's walls. There was a television set in the road, lamps, furniture. These are things that somebody had stuffed into the back of their car. They couldn't shut the tailgate with it full, and they drove down the road from a fire they never needed to evacuate from, losing their belongings on the way down the road. We've seen this more than once, and we see that type of reaction happen frequently. We need you to take your go bag. If you have had time to prepare and you've put thought into this in advance, a computer hard drive that has backups of your photo is a good option. We'd rather see you use the cloud storage options where you store your backups off-site and don't have to worry about packing that computer hard drive during a fire. But we know how valuable photographs can be. Your family photo albums, if you've got them, they need to be near the front door in a container that you can carry with you quickly and load into your car quickly. Passports, all the things that are on our checklist, evacuation checklist, are fantastic to go through. Medications, a handful of things, spare eyeglasses, and your go kit items are the bare minimum. But there are a handful of things there, heirlooms and things that you may need to take with you. You need to be prepared in advance to get those out of your house and loaded into your car quickly. And you should never take time to pack those things or go looking for them when an evacuation order has been issued. Those are some things that we talk about, taking some time to pack up during an evacuation warning when you do have a little extra time.
Absolutely. Great. Other questions? Other things around maps? So Todd, we are getting asked a lot about maps. I'd love to be able to have a map that I can actually identify the different NRGs. That seems to be a big lift. But I think even if I have to use a Sharpie, I'll just do it myself manually. We need some maps, and I'm not sure where the best place would be to go.
We're talking NRG maps specifically, or the evacuation maps?
I think if we could start with a level of detail of a map that I can draw the NRGs. So there isn't an NRG map. For those who are familiar with the Central Marin NRG, we do have a Google map that we're able to identify, but we're not able to print it out well. So Google doesn't support that.
Work with me, Rachel. I can help you with that.
Okay, great. Because we
Reach
definitely
out to me. Reach out to me in 3 weeks.
Okay.
After the 1st of June, I'll be able to help you with that.
All right. I think I probably know why.
Yeah.
All right. So for those on the, who are listening, this is being recorded. We will be posting. I'll need probably about 24 hours. I'll have it posted up on the NRG Marin website. We also have a YouTube channel. So I will send that out to most of the people. I don't know if I don't really have your emails, but I will send it out to the NRG leaders as well as others. So hopefully just check back in on the NRG Marin website. Other questions? Oh, okay. Mary has a question about clearing trees in dense neighborhoods. Mary, what neighborhood are you referring to? Because right now, speaking from Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, MWPA, different areas are being prioritized on doing a lot of, and we don't necessarily call it clearing. It's really about doing a fire break, which is raising the foliage and doing the clearing of the ground level so that a fire, so if you looked at some of the places that have had fires, you'll see the tops of the trees aren't as burned, it's really the bottoms. So they're doing a lot of clearing right now, but what area are you referring to, Mary?
We're in Upper Chapman on Stetson and Upper Chapman.
Yeah, so we're doing work in your neighborhood, and we are removing some trees in your neighborhood, actually, especially. But for the most part, trees are not a big part of our problem with wildfires. The trees themselves and the canopy actually do more benefit than harm, usually, with the kinds of trees we have in Marin. The shade that they provide keeps the ground cooler, keeps more moisture in the soil, keeps the weeds from growing underneath them. So we for the most part, we're not looking at removing trees because we know it doesn't have a particular benefit. Removing dead vegetation, like Rachel alluded to, on the ground underneath trees, the accumulation of branches and limbs and litter that falls out of trees is important, and raising the canopy of the trees up by limbing the lowest limbs up usually around 6 to 10 feet from the ground. It can make a big difference in fires, but most trees are actually pretty safe during fire. Even the dreaded eucalyptus tree, as long as it's been maintained with its lower limbs cleaned up and all of that accumulation of bark that peels off each year, if that gets cleaned up and hauled away, eucalyptus trees are not a significant fire hazard. There are a couple of specific types of trees. Italian cypress, which is usually decorative and right in people's yards, is particularly vulnerable to igniting during fires, and it burns really hot. It's not a native tree, so we'd like to see those removed. But all of our native trees, redwoods, oaks, bays, they all provide more benefit than harm during wildfires, as long as they're maintained.
Thank you.
Right. All right. If anyone, again, reminder about Bon Air, stop by. I will have many of these checklists. I have lots of materials from Fire Safe Marin. I found a stash of evacuation tags, Central Marin evacuation tags, if anyone wants those, although we're not putting a lot of weight on the evacuation tags. If you need to evacuate, don't go look for your tag. You need to evacuate. So, but I have those if you'd like that. What else? Any other final thoughts, comments, questions? Todd, I think we'll be, oh, please.
This was very informative. Thank you for taking the time, both you and Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Jocelyn, where are you at?
I'm in Greenbrae on La Cuesta,
Great. Thank you for being part of this.
right at the bottom.
Good place to be.
Yep.
All right. We appreciate your help. Are you in the NRG? Are you you've been recruited?
I think so. I'm not really sure. I just recently moved back in with my mom to help her and stuff, so I think she is.
All right. You're now recruited. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks for being here, Jocelyn.
Hi,
Yeah.
Jocelyn.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Again, send over questions. We'll be focusing on some new stuff. If you want to stay on, Todd, do we still have you for a second? Mark, do you have a question?
I was just going to tell Jocelyn, hi, this is Mark. We've met. I know you're taking care of your mom, Anne Marie.
Yeah.
So you're in.
Okay, I'm
You
in.
see it and everything.
Perfect.
All right. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you
And
too.
thanks so much, Rachel and Todd.
Great. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for being here. Take care.